Sometimes there's even people out there that have situations where they're living fine one day and they're renting a place and they have a roof over their head, and something happens where something changes in the landlord's life and they have to evict you out of the house for some reason or another, and suddenly you're homeless. Sometimes life gets unbearable. Sometimes life gets really heavy. And the song that she just sang was, there's a raging sea right in front of me, trying to pull me in and bring me to my knees. But I'll just follow you. I'll just follow you. Sometimes life gets extremely hard, and sometimes the situations get impossible. They just feel like it just can't be fixed. And I know I've been there before several times. We're like, okay, God, this one's not fixable. This problem's too big. This one's huge. Well, this morning I've titled my message simply, Mission Impossible, if you choose to accept it. And I know that rings in some people's ears. That whole line right there makes sense. See, in 1996, a series of movies began to be produced called Mission Impossible, which were based off of a television series by the same name. The storylines are created to present missions that are too difficult to accomplish, so difficult to accomplish that they have to bring IMF agents in, better known as Impossible Mission Force agents, and they have to bring them in. And those people are called in to accomplish these missions. Each mission is given as an option, not a requirement. And you know that as well as I do if you've seen these movies before, because each one starts out with this phrase, your mission if you choose to accept it. So it's always an option, not a requirement. It's your mission if you choose to accept it. If you don't want to accept the mission, it'll be given to somebody else, and somebody else will go through this. The reason that the missions are given out as options rather than obligations is because the solutions are not available and the missions are extremely risky. So they send you out on this mission saying, okay, here's the mission, this is what you're going on. Okay, what's the solution? We don't have that. We don't offer you the solution. We just offer you the problem. Wouldn't you like to have that job where your boss just says, here's a problem? Well, what do? I have no idea. You fix it. You fix it. So that's the idea behind the storylines of these movies, is they present this problem, but they don't present a solution. To move forward requires a confidence that the impossible can be accomplished. If you're foolish enough to believe that the impossible can be accomplished, you'll be the one that takes on that task. And the movies are entertaining. They're action-packed, of course, because, well, they're in an impossible mission, and they've got to figure out where the solution lies. If I were to pick one person out of the Bible who was in an impossible mission more times than they were not, I would have to go with Moses. Now you think of David and Goliath. Okay, that's an impossible mission, and we see him go through that, and that was a huge, huge feat that day. But when you look at Moses, it's just one page after another. It's like the guy doesn't get a break. God says, okay, here's an impossible mission. And now that one's done, here's another one, and he just kind of stacks it up. So if I were to pick anybody, it would probably be Moses. Moses is one of those people in the Bible that God uses in phenomenal ways. And you see the picture up here on the screen, and you immediately you can connect and say, okay, yeah, I get that story. Talk about an impossible mission. There's a raging sea right in front of me trying to pull me in and take me to my knees. Yeah, we understand the story there. Moses was just like any other person, but he learned to do something which set him apart from everybody else. See, he learned that the impossible was sometimes the only way possible, which is an incredible lesson to learn in life. When we can understand that sometimes the impossible is the only way possible, that's going to open up a brand new avenue in your life. And you're going to launch forward in your life farther than ever before, because suddenly we realize, okay, there's no way possible that this can be accomplished. So I'm going to have to go and check into the impossible category in order to get this done, because I don't have any way to do this on my own. There was a pattern of how Moses lived his life, and I would like to take the next few minutes to talk about this pattern and see why God was able to bless his life in so many ways. When it came to choosing a man to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and teach them the ways of God, Moses was the most unlikely candidate for the job. A lot of times we don't think about that, but Moses, that's the wrong pick. Moses wouldn't be the right guy for the job if we think it through here. Moses had everything stacked against him. He didn't even stand much of a chance from the very beginning. I mean, right out of the gate, Moses is the least possible candidate to lead the people out of Israel. At the end of chapter 1 in the book of Exodus, we see that Pharaoh commands that every male child is supposed to be drowned in the river. And then Moses' story begins in the very next verse of chapter 2. So let's just look, let's start right there in Exodus chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "And a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river bank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, 'This is one of the Hebrews' children.'" God sets the scene for the rest of Moses' life right here at the beginning of Moses' life. Moses doesn't have a choice in this matter. He's just a 3-month-old baby. And his mom puts him in this basket and sets him along the river. And his sister's just going to watch and see what happens to Moses, because if Pharaoh's people come to his house, they're going to drown Moses in the river. So Moses' mom says, "Okay, I'm just going to make this basket and I'm going to hide him in the bulrushes by the riverside, and Miriam, his sister, you just go watch and see what happens." What am I supposed to do? I don't know, just see what happens. I just need the report back. Moses has just been placed in the exact place he needs to be in order to be killed. All the male babies are going to be what? Drowned in the river. What should we do? Put them in the river. Okay. So far, so good. We're doing good. So Moses has just been placed in the place he needs to be in order to be killed, and he meets the exact description of the person that's supposed to be killed. He's a Hebrew male child. Now he's found by the very people who want to kill him. Good plan. This is so far, so good. God's plan to save Moses from the people who want to destroy him is to place him in the hands of the people who want to destroy him. That's the very beginning of Moses' story. How do I protect him? These people want to kill him. Well, let's turn him over to those people. All right. So far, Moses is not looking like the guy that we're going to pick to save the children of Israel. This plan shouldn't work, but it does. Moses' parents knew that it was just legalized to kill these babies. They also knew that it was wrong to do so. So they took a stand to follow God, even though they did not know the outcome. There's no way they could have known the outcome. But they said that it would be wrong to kill him. So we're just going to follow God. We're just going to hide him along the riverside. Let's look at verse 7 of Exodus chapter 2. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." Moses' mom is now being paid to be Moses' mom. That's a good gig. That's a good deal right there. See, God blessed Moses' parents for their faithfulness. Like, I know it's wrong to kill him. We can't kill him. So God, we're just going to follow you. We're just going to follow you. And God blesses so much that not only are you Moses' mom, but that's your job. That's your full-time paid job, is to be Moses' mom. That's a pretty good deal. But the chance of Moses becoming a man who God would be able to use to free his people from Egypt just got a whole lot worse because of this. Now Moses is considered to be the son of the wealthiest family in the world. Moses just got an upgrade as far as life goes. He is now considered to be the son of the wealthiest family on the planet. Anything Moses desires is at his fingertips. He has it all. He is living the life that most people don't even know how to dream of. He's got everything. Why would he ever choose to leave that? That would be a tough thing to walk away from. Moses knows where he came from. He knows where he comes from. He was raised by his mom and then turned over to Pharaoh's daughter. So he knows his background. And he knows about his Hebrew past. He knows where his people came from and what they're suffering with right now. But he has been given a gift that would be difficult to pass up. He's been given the world. Anything Moses wants is at his fingertips. Just ask. The wealthiest family on the planet at that time, you are their son. That's a hard thing to walk away from. But then God intervenes. And God steps in to help by stepping out of the way. And sometimes God has to do this. And I want you to catch what I'm saying here. So God sometimes intervenes. And how he steps in is he steps out. And sometimes God uses that action right there to help us out. Sometimes God lets our world shatter because we built it on the wrong things. And after our world shatters, he's right there to help us rebuild it correctly. But sometimes he steps out of the way and lets everything come down on us. God does know what we need. He always knows what we need. And sometimes he has to allow the negative to happen in order to help us find it. And that's exactly what he's doing for Moses here. Let's look at verse 11 of chapter 2 here. Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way. And when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did the wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" Then he said, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Because Moses chooses to kill an Egyptian, he is now forced to remove himself from Egypt. I've got to go. I've got to leave everything that was at my fingertips. I had everything I could ever ask for. Now I've got to get out of here because the Pharaoh himself is seeking to kill me because I killed an Egyptian. God was not in favor of what Moses did, but he did use it to help Moses. Moses, you're never going to answer the call if life is just handed to you on a silver platter. So I'm going to allow this sin to happen. It's your free will. It's your choice. But I'm going to step out of the way and I'm going to allow it to happen. And God allows Moses to do this, and he's caught for it. So Moses has no choice but to walk away from everything that is holding him back. Sometimes God has to do that in our life. Sometimes the best way God can step in is by stepping out because we built it on the wrong foundation. God just offered Moses freedom by making him a fugitive. So far, mission seems possible. You want freedom? Yes, I need freedom. Then I will make you a fugitive. I don't think we're on the same page, God. Freedom is not the life of a fugitive. That's always on the run. That's not going to work. And you want me to what? I want you to save my people from Egypt. Okay, we're going to need a new plan. No, this plan's working perfectly. He makes him a fugitive. God wants to use Moses to free the people from Egypt, but now Moses is on top of Egypt's most wanted list. Like, I can't even go in there now, God. How am I going to save them? The mission just seems to be getting more and more impossible with every verse as we read along here. Moses ends up living in the land of Midian until all the people who want him dead have died in Egypt. Now all those people are dead. Then God gives Moses a visual aid of how things are going to be accomplished. Now God starts opening up the plan. He says, you want to know how the impossible is going to be done? Or how this plan is going to be possible? The only way this plan will ever be possible is to use the impossible. That's the only way we're going to get this done. Look at Exodus chapter 3 and verse 2 with me. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. Moses is just watching his father-in-law's sheep when he sees a bush that is on fire, but it's not being consumed. What Moses is seeing is the impossible somehow being accomplished. God gives him a visual aid. Look at that. That's not possible. Is it happening? It's happening, but it's not possible. The first thing God shows Moses is that the impossible can be accomplished. And Moses is looking at this like, how in the world is this happening? How is it possible? I would like to show you a few highlights in order to point out the gist of what Moses is hearing from God in this conversation in the burning bush. God begins to speak to Moses from the bush and delivers these statements to him. Exodus 3 verse 10 says, come now, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So that's the mission. While Moses is doing that, God's going to be working behind the scenes also. Look at this next verse here, Exodus 4:21. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Mission, get the people out of there. What are you going to do? I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart so he won't let them go. Perfect. Perfect. We're on the same team, right? We're on the same team. Why does the mission seem to be getting more impossible? Every time you read a verse, it seems to be that Moses' situation is getting more and more difficult. God says, okay, you go in there and tell Pharaoh to let the people go. You will free them. Sounds good. What are you going to do? I'm going to harden his heart so he won't let them go. Okay. All right. Now, the one thing Moses has in his mind the whole time is, but I saw a bush that was burning, and yet it was not consumed. So I know the impossible can be accomplished. It can be accomplished because I saw it with my own eyes, and then God spoke to me. So the God that was in that fire has to be the one that made it possible for the impossible to happen. So, okay, the plan is I tell him to let the people go, and you keep that from happening. All right, but I'll follow. I'll follow. Moses, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is completely impossible. And Moses says, okay. Okay. And I want to point out that it was something that Moses could have walked away from. He still had free will. It was his choice to accept it or to decline. And at face value, the success rate of this mission is not looking good. It's not looking good. The one that sends you out on the mission says, I'm going to make it impossible for you to succeed. And they're on the same side. It's not, the success rate is plummeting. It's not looking good. But Moses chooses to accept it. And that's when things start looking bad. Okay, just to let you know, now it's going to progress in the negative way here. By the way, it has been years since Moses left Egypt by this point. And since then, the Bible tells us that he has gotten married and has kids. Moses isn't just going back alone. He now has a family that's going back with him. The decision to follow God was not only going to affect him, but it was going to affect his wife and his children too. It's even harder to make this decision now. I'll do anything. But once I consider my wife and children, I have a lot more thinking to do. Because I don't want to drag them into something that might be risky because I love them. If I'm alone, I do a lot more stupid stuff than I do now. But because I have wife and kids, I think more than I would if I was single. Because it affects them too. Before Moses could lead the people of Israel, he had to first lead his own family. We can never forget that we're supposed to be an example to the people in our family, and we're supposed to be an example to the people around us. And Moses had to be that example. Say, hey, God spoke to me. When? It was out of a bush that was on fire. But the bush is still there because the bush didn't burn at all. Do you trust me? You want to follow me? He's got to lead his own family. And it's a tough call. So Moses and his family end up agreeing together to do this. And they go up together into a mission with the hope that the impossible will somehow become possible. Somehow. The impossible has got to be accomplished. After 10 plagues fall on Egypt, the Pharaoh finally says that the people can go. He says, let them go. And by the way, he didn't set them free because his heart changed. He set them free because he had had enough. He was fed up. He could not take it anymore. He says, get out of here. Just get out of here. And that's when God steps in and makes the impossible a little bit more impossible. Exodus chapter 13 and verse 17. Then it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go that God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest perhaps the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the wilderness, by way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. And the children of Israel went up in orderly ranks out of the land of Egypt. God knew what he was doing, but I am fairly certain that it did not make sense in the minds of the people. From, okay, you're free to go. All right, Moses, which way do we go? Now, if they had just left by way of the land of the Philistines, they would have been free sooner, because it's right there. Just go out that way, you're out. But God takes them out the back way, straight for the Red Sea. And they don't know God's intentions. They don't know the reason why God's doing this. God said, but when they see war, they'll turn back to Egypt. So I'm going to send them this way. But logically thinking as people, hey, Moses, we're free to go. Which way do we go? There's the door. You want to leave? No. Let's go that way. Yeah, that's near, and we can get out faster if we go this way. But we're going to go this way. Anybody know what's this way? There's an ocean that way, Moses. That's the Red Sea. See, this road led straight to a dead end, and even Moses knew that. Moses knows the whole thing. Like, yeah, I know, there's a Red Sea up there. But God said to go this way, so we're going to go this way. I wish I could have been there for that little trip. I'm sure the people were asking Moses what was going on and why they were going the wrong way. What's going on, Moses? What's going on? Then God decides to make it a little more interesting. He gives them what seems to be a broken GPS system to lead them straight to the water. I got a gift for you, Moses. Oh yeah, what's that? Verse 21 of chapter 13. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud and led the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light. So as to go by day and night, he did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. I'm sure the people are thinking, we need to recalculate the pillar. Because if we would just go out this way, we'd be free sooner, Moses. But the pillar seems to be taking us straight to the Red Sea. Can we recalculate? The GPS system seems to be broke, Moses. So what do we do? And Moses has one thing on his mind. Trust the one in the fire. Just trust the one in the fire. He spoke to me from the bush, and now he is leading us by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. Moses had seen the burning bush that was not being burnt, and he has seen the impossible happen. Now that same God who spoke to him from the burning bush is leading them with a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. And the Bible gives us no indication at all that Moses knew how they were going to get out of this mess. But he did know that it was possible, because he's seen the impossible made possible. Then, of course, God makes it impossible, because God is good at that. God tells Moses the next part of the plan. Chapter 14 and verse 4. Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them. And I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. Next step, cause the Egyptians to pursue the Israelites. Trap the people of Israel between an ocean and an army who wants them dead. That's the next phase of the plan. And when the people realize that they're trapped, they run to Moses with a few concerns. I've got a concern. There's an ocean in front of us and an army coming behind us, and they want to kill us. Just one of my little concerns. Exodus 14 and verse 11. Then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Moses understands their fear. He knows that they are looking right into the face of the impossible. But he does not change his course. And we're going to follow the one in the fire. We're just going to keep following. Moses doesn't know anything to do but trust God. He's like, all I know to do is trust God. Did you see the ocean? I see the ocean. You hear about the army? I heard about the army. What's the next part of the plan? Follow the pillar. Just trust the one in the fire. That's all I've got. I just know how to trust God. God tells Moses, he ends up telling Moses to raise his rod up. And then he sends an east wind throughout the night. And the Red Sea splits in two. Now, if I had to pick a Bible story that I'd like to zoom back to and just be part of, I think that would be on the top of my list. I would love to see that happen. I would love to see an ocean split in two. Chapter 14 and verse 22. So the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. God delivered them out of Egypt through the impossible. But he also gets rid of the Egyptians in the same way. And I love how God's not done. Even though they've just been freed from Egypt and they, hey Moses, did you bring us out to kill us? No. What are we going to do? We're going to follow the pillar. It's starting to go over the ocean. You sure you want to follow? Yeah, hold on. Let me get my stick. God told me to raise the rod. What's that supposed to do? I don't know yet. Just raise the rod up. And then they start seeing the impossible being accomplished. And the ocean starts splitting in two and standing up, a wall on their right hand and a wall on their left hand side. And I'm sure they're making pretty good speed. They're making good time getting through this thing, because this is their first time walking through the middle of an ocean that's split in two. I don't know what the expiration date is on this, guys, but let's just book it. Let's just get through. And you've got about 2 million people at that time crossing the Red Sea. And immediately they realize the impossible is possible. It is possible. And Moses is just thinking, just trust the one in the fire. Just trust the one in the fire. I just got to keep following him. God delivered them out of Egypt by using the impossible. But as I said, he destroys the Egyptians the same way. Once the Egyptian armies have arrived into the middle of the Red Sea, God does one more impossible feat. And if you don't think God has a sense of humor, you will figure it out real quick that he does. Exodus chapter 14 and verse 25. And he took off their chariot wheels, so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. Can you imagine what's going through the minds of the Pharaoh and his army when all the chariot wheels pop off? They're just riding through and then all the wheels pop off the chariots. What are the chances? I mean, I can understand maybe a wheel comes off one chariot, but God removes the wheels of the chariots. Like, what are the chances? And I'm sure they're thinking, this is impossible. But that's what our God specializes in. As the children of Israel look back, the Egyptians are just sitting. They're just sitting in the middle of the Red Sea because they don't have any wheels. All their wheels pop off and they're thinking, what are the chances? How? And our environment's not exactly where we want to have a flat right now. What are the chances that all the wheels came off at once? It's impossible. But we serve the God of the impossible. God specializes in this stuff. I love that before God closes the water on the Egyptians, because He closes the ocean back up, and it drowns the Egyptians, and Moses and the Israelites don't have to worry about that anymore. It's over. But before God closes the waters on the Egyptians, I love that God tells us their final thoughts. Because in that verse that we just read, it says they said, the Lord fights for them. And then God closes the curtains on their show. But before they die, God says, one more word. Go ahead, one more thought. Give me one more thought. And their final thought is, the Lord fights for them. And then God closes the waters on them. I'm not sure what part of the story you fit into this morning. But we have a God of the impossible fighting for us. I don't know the struggles you might be going through. Maybe right now you're living good and right now there's no problems facing you, and praise God for that. But understand, we are still in a dying world. We are still in a cursed world. We are still in a life that problems are going to come our way. And the more you serve God, the more problems you're going to see come your way. So even if you're sitting good right now, praise God for that. But understand, there is going to be an ocean in front of you at some point. And it is going to come. Moses was able to move forward and trust God and His ability to do great things through him because he had seen the impossible happen before. I've seen the impossible happen before, so I know it can be possible that the impossible can be accomplished. I know it's possible. And if you're saved this morning, you have also seen the impossible. And you might be thinking, I've never seen the impossible. I am saved, but I've never seen the impossible. Well, the truth is, if you are saved, you have seen the impossible. You've experienced the impossible. In Matthew, a young man comes up to Jesus and asks him how to receive salvation. What do I do to receive eternal life? And Jesus answers him basically by telling him to keep the commandments and love his neighbor as himself. And he does that with an illustration because the guy was very wealthy. He says, hey, sell all your stuff and give it to the poor and follow me. And the young man says, I can't do that. Well, that's an example of loving your neighbor as yourself. You can't do that. Even the disciples knew that this is impossible because we sin. Can we love our neighbor as ourselves all the time, perfectly, follow all God's commandments perfectly and love our neighbor as ourselves? No. No, that takes God because we're still us. We're still sinners. Look at what the disciples say in Matthew chapter 19 and verse 25. When his disciples heard it, they were greatly astonished, saying, who then can be saved? But Jesus looked at them and said to them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. If you are on your way to heaven, you have experienced the impossible. You've experienced it, and I've experienced it. I'm telling you that there's no way any of us would have been able to love to the capacity that God loved us. We are not able to do that. He allowed His own Son to pay the agonizing price for the very people who despised and rejected Him. We were the guilty, and the Father placed our price on the head of His innocent Son in order to offer life to a people who wanted nothing to do with Him. I don't know of one person who could ever let a child who they love pay the penalty for a guilty people who hate that child. I don't know of anybody like that. I know I'm not like that. If you hate my child and you constantly do stuff to hurt my child, and then you want me to let my child die to save your life, You can have my life. I might be able to do that. I might be able to bring myself to the point where I can lay my life down to save your life. But you're not taking my innocent son or daughter's life to save your life. You can take mine, but I don't know how to love to that capacity. I don't know of anybody that does. It's impossible. But the God of the impossible did it for me, and He did it for you. So if you're saved this morning, you have seen the impossible. Satan wants us to doubt and fear things that seem impossible. Maybe it's finances. And believe me, that's used a lot. I don't have rich friends. And if I'm their friend, they don't have a rich friend either. If it costs $1, I think about it. I don't have a lot of money. I've never had a lot of money. So I've been there before where finances seem impossible. When there is a required bill and I don't have the money there and it just seems impossible. But you know what? God has always brought me through it. Always. Maybe health is the thing that seems impossible. Maybe it's that diagnosis. Maybe it's what you're going through right now. You're like, it's impossible. Maybe it's a relationship that you have. Maybe it's your own marriage. It seems impossible. Maybe it's ministry. Have you ever thought about that? Well, a lot of times we think about a pastor or a missionary. They're in the ministry, but what about you? We are all in the ministry. And sometimes you're thinking about this person that needs to be saved or this person that needs to turn their life back to God, and you're thinking, it's impossible. It's completely impossible. Satan loves it when we see the ocean in front of us and the army closing in behind us. He loves it when we see that. And he loves to see us worry. He loves to see us decrease in faith. Let their faith waver, because the army is not slowing down. They're still coming. And the ocean is just as deep as it has always been. I love to watch you panic. I love to watch you fall in your faith and in your trust in God. There are going to be many things in life that seem impossible, in your life and in my life. And we cannot forget that God loves to work through those types of situations. Read the Bible. God usually does not pick the common sense version. He uses the impossible version to show that He is God and He's able to overcome that. When the people of Israel were yelling at Moses for his apparent misguided leadership, Moses chooses to follow the pillar. Trust the one in the fire. Just trust the one in the fire. When you see, Moses had to answer the same question that God asks us in Jeremiah chapter 32. He had to answer this question himself. Jeremiah 32 and verse 27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? Moses had to answer that question just like we have to answer that question. Is there anything too hard for Him? The truth is, the answer is no. We know that in our heads, but do we know that in our hearts when the impossible things start rising? When the water seems to be getting deeper and the army is approaching us from behind? Is there anything too hard for God? The answer is no. The answer is no. Do we know that in our head? Yeah. But God, I'm shaking a little bit here. My faith is a little bit uneasy right now because it's impossible. But you're talking to the God of the impossible. Can the bush burn and not be consumed? Yes. Can the ocean split in two? Yes. Can God bring you safely across? Yes. Have you seen the impossible in your own life? If you are saved, yes, you have. Can we trust God to do what is right, even if it goes against our plans? What if His plan is different than our plan? Can we still trust Him? Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." You have a plan? Yes, and I'm telling you, it's better than yours. It's better than your plan. We need to trust that God is still in control and still has our best interests in mind all the time. even when things seem to be going the wrong way. Sometimes God places us in the hands of the Pharaoh's family in order to deliver us from the hands of the Pharaoh's family. Sometimes plans just seem, where are you, God? Where are you right now? Oh, it was my idea to put you here. This is not working for me. Oh, it's working for you. It doesn't feel like it's working for me. Oh, it's working for you in an amazing way. Just wait for it. You're going to see it. I delivered you into the hands of Pharaoh. Why? So I can deliver you from the hands of Pharaoh. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to us, but the God of the impossible has it under control, and He has your best interest in mind all the time. So this morning I would like to tell you your mission. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to trust in the God of the impossible. Just trust Him. Yeah, but my situation, is it impossible? Yeah. Then He's the one you're going to need to follow. Follow the one in the fire. Trust the one in the fire. Philippians 4:19. And my God shall supply all your need according to His riches and glory by Christ Jesus. This is a promise. He will supply all your needs. He is going to take care of you. What if it goes against my plan? Then thank God He had His plan, because it's going to be so much better than your plan. His ways are higher than your ways. His thoughts are higher than your thoughts. You may be thinking that He might be able to do the impossible, but there are some things that you just can't do. Now, He might be able to do the impossible, but there are some things I just can't do. I just can't do it. There are some burdens that you just can't bear. Yeah, God, you can handle the impossible, but these burdens are too heavy for me to bear. There are some callings that you just don't feel like you can answer because you feel like you're too weak. And there's some temptations that you just feel like you can't resist. Yeah, I just can't do it. Well, the God of the impossible knows your weakness. So He gave you another promise. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You might not be able to split a sea in two, but He can. He can. You can do all things. I can resist the temptation. Through Christ you can. I can handle this burden. Through Christ you can. I can answer this call in my life. Yes. Especially if God's the one that called you. Hey Moses, here's the plan. You go deliver the people of Israel out of Egypt. All right, God, what are you going to do? I'm going to make it so you can't. I'm going to make it impossible. Okay. And I'm going to chase you while you do it, because my situation's too big and I can't handle it. But I know you can. You are the God of the impossible. And I know I can chase you. I know you're going to do it. You're going to make it impossible just so the world knows that you can even handle that. You can even handle the impossible. I choose to accept a world of impossibilities, because in that world lives the God of the impossible. We must choose to follow Him. Believe me, I have seen impossible things in my life, and somehow they got accomplished. I don't even know how it happened still. There are some things I saw as impossible, and then God got my mind off of it, and years later I look back and I'm like, I wonder how that got done, because I don't even remember the closure on that story. I just forgot about it. God had it under control. He's the one we must call on throughout our lives, because He's the one that can cause the burning bush to burn and yet not burn. He's the one that can open the Red Sea, and you can walk on land that was just a few minutes ago very, very, very wet. And you're walking on dry land across an ocean, at the bottom of the ocean. Jeremiah 33, verse 3. He says, call to me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. He can take you through the impossible. You want to see things that will blow your mind? Call on me. Yeah, but this one's impossible. That's what I specialize in. The impossible. By the way, He created the whole universe in 6 days. You know how He did it? He told it to be there. I'm thinking that's impossible. Now, if He can handle that in the very first week, don't you think He can handle your big problems and my big problems? He's got it. He's got this. Your mission is to love Him with all of your heart and to follow Him. The mission is impossible, but with God, the impossible is possible. And I don't know what you're going through today. I don't know the struggle that's coming your way. I don't know what you're carrying right now. But I know the one that's carrying you. And maybe you shouldn't worry so much about what's going to happen, but who's going to perform it. Trust the God of the impossible. And it's your mission if you choose to accept it. You do have the choice. I can just pile up those worries that Satan keeps sending my way, or I can say, you're out. And as crazy as this sounds, I'm going to trust the one in the fire. And God, I'm going to follow you. And when it seems to be crumbling still, I know you still have it. And when everything turns against my plans, at least we still have your plans. It might be hard, but God's got that. We serve the God of the impossible. Can St. Joseph, Missouri be reached for Christ? I'm telling you, it's impossible. So it's a good thing we have the God of the impossible. And I'm looking forward to seeing it accomplished. Start with just a few people and watch God blow our minds. Trust the God of the impossible. And it is your mission to do that. Choose to accept it. Stand with me this morning.